Opening the wall.
Unclear. We are live.
We're live. It's Senate Appropriations, March 21st. We are not talking about fiscal 26 budget requests. We're doing bills that were sent to appropriations by Rule 31 to review their impact on revenues of the state. And we're now talking about S65. We have our wonderful Ledge Council to lead us through it, and the chair of the Committee of Origin. So I don't know, Senator Watson, if you want to talk about it, or do you want to have Ledge Council, or both? Or
sure. I mean, I'm happy to do a broad vision of what this bill does. So the primary issue that we're trying to address with this is that right now the Public Utility Commission evaluates efficiency Vermont in a way that means that 90% of the work, the money that they have from electric efficiency charge is used for specifically electric consumption reduction. And when we think about our goals for greenhouse gas reductions, that actually is at cross purposes to that as a goal, because things like beneficial electrification, like electric vehicles or heat pumps, whatever, would actually increase electric consumption. And so the vision of this bill is to shift the prioritization of what Efficiency Vermont is allowed to do with that money to make the primary priority greenhouse gas reductions. And I mean, when the legislation started 17 years ago, there was just a big list of objectives, and so all of those objectives are included in the things that they need to accomplish, but there was no prioritization there. So that the current prioritization that we have now is as a result of just how it all played out with the Public Utility Commission. And so this is just a redirection of where we want that money to go, because right now only 5% of their mission is allocated to a greenhouse gas reduction specifically. The other issue that this addresses is that there are a lot of folks who are of lower income that have a harder time either accessing the money or being able to take advantage of energy improvements in their home. It's often much more expensive to make up energy upgrades to low-income homes. And we see that through the energy burden report that that Efficiency Vermont came out with a couple of years ago. And so, the first thing that it does is, as I mentioned, it prioritizes greenhouse gas reductions as the main thing, though the other goals don't go away; they're still there. And then the second thing it does is that it carves out 25% of Efficiency Vermont's budget to be specifically spent towards the benefit of low and moderate income folks, and then an additional 12.5% to go towards small businesses and nonprofits. You know, trying again to get benefits to folks that that might otherwise not either be able to or not have otherwise be taking advantage of those benefits. And everybody's paying in, and so we want to focus on getting this help to the people who need it the most. So those are the main two things that it does, and reasons why it's here, because as you know, it does affect expenditures of the state in that way. So it does shift how the money is spent, or the goals of how that money is spent. It's worth noting that it fixes the portion of Efficiency Vermont's budgets that's associated with the electric efficiency charge. It just fixes it at, I think it's the 2026 rate, and then adjusts it for inflation after that. And so there, well, I should say one other thing before I leave this, before I go into talking a little bit more about the financial implications. There is also a second half of this, which is about removing language about the clean heat standard that's not being used. It updates the fuel dealer registry, but that doesn't have any financial implications. So in terms of the electric efficiency charge, because it fixes the budget for that, and as we're seeing the electric load increase, the way that electric efficiency charge is calculated is it takes that budget and divides it by the electric load. And as that electric load increases, we expect the electric efficiency charge to go down. And in fact, it has been going down. It's dropped 21% since 2018. But we expect that to continue to drop as a result of this work, particularly with more money going towards beneficial electrification, which should increase the load in general. Let's see if there's anything else I want to say about that. So there is I would note that there is a fiscal note on this that talks about the pressures. There's a lot of discussion about the pressures on electric rates. Some pressures driving it up, but there are others that drive it down. So particularly with things to note include like the reduced electric efficiency work. That is a downward pressure on rates. We'd be doing less of that, but there are other reasons why it would increase the downward pressure on rates, which is to say that there's more electrification happening. So there's just more load in general. There's also what we're doing is a proxy with, or I could say it's analogous to what we're doing with Tier 3, and that has also created downward pressure on rates that way. But I feel like I should leave it there for now. So yeah, I think it's a good thing, and it aligns with our goals around climate action and greenhouse gas reduction. So without increasing the electric efficiency charge, we can be doing more climate work, which we know we need to do. So there we are.
Okay, any questions for Senator Watson on that? And those that are standing, those chairs, even though they're folded up, they are available for sitting. Ellen won't mind if you're sitting down. Ellen, is there anything that you want to highlight in the text? One question I had, I think, would be for you. There was reference to the PACE Reserve Fund in here. I think it's on page 5 is the first place it comes. Is that the PACE project that I think it is? That doesn't do anything? But we just have to mention it because maybe there'll be some funds transferred. There's no funds in that fund now, I think.
Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm actually not sure what funds are in the PACE Reserve Fund. The language on page 5 and page 6 is all existing language that's being moved here. Right. And so this is an existing framework that says all of the funds that are not going into the fund as were designated under that statute are going to go into this fund. So one of the things this bill is doing is moving funding that has been separated out previously for thermal and process fuel efficiency projects is being moved over to this other part of the statute so that it can be spent on electrification as well. So we are commingling these funds that previously were separate.
So what were the two separate funds called?
So the electric efficiency fund and the fuel efficiency fund.
Now they'll just be an efficiency fund.
We haven't deleted them, but it's allowing that the funds in the fuel efficiency fund be spent on electrification as well.
So it's not commingling.
I'm not a technical money person, so perhaps that was the wrong. You allowing that the funds in that fund be spent on additional types of projects.
Okay. So it's just kind of broadening the scope on the electric fund or thermal fund.
Thermal.
Okay.
Yeah. So previously the electric efficiency charge funds could only be spent on electric efficiency projects. Now, and then the thermal efficiency funds could only be spent on thermal efficiency. Now they can both be spent on both types of projects. And there is also an emphasis on greenhouse gas reduction projects as well.
So even though there's no PACE project, property assessed clean energy, if I remember correctly, even though that doesn't happen, it's just here because it was always there.
Yes.
And we probably will never put any money into it, but. Okay, then the other question I had, because, I'm looking at this bill not from an energy perspective, but just from an appropriations perspective, is the word budget seems to be used different ways in here. Let me give you an example, and you can just tell me if it's an issue or not. So I think it's on page 4. All I have it on here is highlighted. At the top of page 4, it says the commission shall basically set the budget I guess it says the annual revenue raise will be set by the 26 budget. But it seems like other times they're talking about a budget that seems more different. So setting the annual amount that the charge has to raise to the 26 budget. But then it says later that the commission will set a budget. And I know this was, I think, in the letter or comments that the Public Utility Commission gave. So I didn't know if there's an issue there. So like on page 7 in A, when it says the commission shall establish an appropriate budget for the appointed entity. But on that other section 4, it seems like that's the budget. It's on the 26, fiscal 26, that's the budget. And is it just because the word budget is kind of being used differently? It seems like on page 7, that's more of a budget as far, not the total number, but the detailed number, like the plan or the appropriations of the budget. Does that make any sense?
It does. I don't think I have an answer for that.
Okay.
Thank you. So the intent of the reference on page 7 is that is the intention there is that it's how that money that is raised that's referenced in the other section is spent. So if it's more useful to use a different word there, an expenditure plan or resource management plan, something, I forget what
DRP.
DRP, yeah. Whatever the, how that money is allocated, which is, the purview of this committee, then that would be a fine change if a different word or phrase is useful there.
Okay. And in the S65 that was posted, which I think came from you, Alan, there's some highlights in there. Is that those highlights mean anything?
Can you tell me what draft?
It was the one on our website, draft 1.1.
So that was
238 yesterday.
That would have been the finance amendment?
Yeah.
Because that was.
230. Listen,
maybe
there's
not.
been many drafts of this bill, and so if I did not send the clean copy, I apologize.
We have a clean copy and
Got two,
Oh,
and
we
an
have two
amended
copies?
yeah.
and an
It says-
amended
It says
copy.
clean copy and then as
So,
amended,
After, under
yeah,
Tchaikovsky's name?
yeah.
So it's also possible, I don't actually think finance has the clean copy, I think,
We have it.
no, I know, but if finance sent you the version they were working on,
The clean copy is dated 3/14.
that was, draft 7.1, so that's the Senate Natural Resources
Yeah,
Committee.
right.
And then the finance, if there's highlighting in the finance version, that would be because those are the changes that are, what are being changed from the Senate Natural Resources version and the finance version. But
It's the full
yes,
bill.
I would suspect
I
that,
think,
yes, that would,
okay, and also this, I think this is just the finance amendment, because it has nothing about the clean heat standard or anything like that in here.
Oh, right, the
So-
one that's 1.1?
Yeah,
Right, yeah,
And I
because it
don't know
left
if-
that alone.
the bill doesn't end with, does it end with
Right.
section 1.b? Does that go to the clean heat standard, or is there
No.
more sufficiency Vermont?
the finance amendment only amends the efficiency portion of the bill, not any of the clean heat standard language. And so, yes, their amendment was just on the first part, and so they did add a section A1 and AB.
And so
at the end, but
after 1B and as passed by natural resources, there's nothing more about efficiency Vermont. So if you're looking at that amendment, you're seeing all the efficiency Vermont part.
correct.
And the second part, let's call it, but it's section something else. It is section 2.
Yeah.
Section 2 basically repeals the clean heat standard language
Yes.
and adds some new language on a registry.
Yes.
No effect on revenues of the state.
No.
Okay, although I was just handed a note that there is a fiscal note for this bill, hot off the presses.
So, yeah, I'll bring to James.
Okay, so well, before we get to that, is there any other questions for Ledge Council on the details of the wording? Okay, thank you. Okay, JFO.
For the record, James Duffy from the Direct Fiscal Office. So JFO had prepared a fiscal note for an earlier version of this bill. However, the direct impacts to the state budget from this are largely indirect and secondary, to the extent that the policy changes contained in the bill might impact retail electricity prices going forward, could impact how much the state pays for retail electricity in its buildings, and to the extent that it causes electricity consumption to go up or down, would impact revenue sources from gross receipts tax on electricity sales. There is not a fiscal note for the current draft of the bill, but just given those secondary and direct impacts to the budget, but I think JFO's assessment of fiscal impacts of the bill would be unchanged from that previous version.
Okay, and there's nothing in the bill that because when I talked to the Senate Secretary about why the bill even came here, you mentioned something about like excess funds or how excess funds were spent, but I didn't see anything in the bill about that really, but that doesn't ring a bell to you?
I'm sorry, sure. Was that correspondence from JFO?
No, this was talking to the Senate Secretary. He thought there was some language in here about if there was excess funds, how those funds were spent. But I didn't, in a quick view of the bill, I didn't see anything about, maybe he just saw the language about the efficiency fund or the thermal efficiency fund and how that money is used.
I can't to that precise detail without looking back at the bill language, but I'm happy to take a quick look at it and clarify.
Is there anything that you
Well, I guess I had the same conversation
Okay.
with Secretary Bloomer, and it sounded like his description of it was like, oh, as efficiency work decreases, then whatever is the excess is what you would use for new projects, which I thought was not quite. I mean, I'll just say I don't think that was quite like an accurate understanding of what it was doing, but
Yeah.
it was.
That's what
That's how he described it to me.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for getting this out. So there isn't really a direct impact on the fiscal reality of the state for this. So any other questions about the fiscal impact or about what the bill says? Yes, Mr. Duffy.
Sure, I'll just clarify that there's been testimony on this bill regarding how it could impact retail electricity prices, which I'm sure I'm not going to discuss. JFO's fiscal note does not comment on whether we're not in a position to comment on how the bill could affect retail electricity prices. So the fiscal note is limited to those kind of secondary impacts if there were an effect on retail electricity prices. Just to clarify.
May they occurred, this would maybe be the effect.
Yeah.
Hypothetical.
Right. Okay.
Well,
Yes.
and just on that, I appreciate that you've identified the different pressures. You're not necessarily like a quantified kind of way, but to say this may have an upward effect and this may have a downward effect, and I appreciate that.
Okay. Yes.
I don't know if the chair would entertain a motion to move the bill favorably.
I would entertain a motion, but as far as discussion goes on that, I don't want to start calling the roll. You never know with the clerks in this committee. They're very power hungry.
It's true.
Give me that, please. So this is a motion to move the bill favorably. And I'll be voting yes on that because looking at the bill as far as it affects the revenues of the state is basically, it's even generous to say it was de minimis. there isn't any really. And so I think looking at it from an appropriations committee's point of view, I don't see a reason not to move it to the floor. But at this point, the way the bill is drafted, I would vote no on it. So I want to just be clear that my yes vote today to get it out of committee does not mean I'm going to vote for it on the floor. I'm going to make an amendment on the floor to make the changes that I think is needed to get my support. But I just want to be clear that my yes vote isn't a yes on the bill, but a yes on its fiscal impacts to the state and the purview of this committee. So unless there's any other discussion, the clerk shall call the roll.
All right, Senator Norris? No. Senator Watson?
Yes.
Senator Baruth?
Yes.
Senator Lyons?
Yes.
Senator Westman?
No.
Senator Brennan? No. Senator Perchlik?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, we were just talking about it. All good.
I have speakers in every room. So you want any clarification from me, or you all set?
We're all set.
Is it? Yes, it is, yes, 21st, yeah. First full day.
What draft should we say this? Or do we have to put that on?
1.1?
You're, approving, instead of, the Senate Finance version was 1.1.
But is it the whole bill? Or the Senate Finance amendment was the first part of the bill? Or
I think you're not making an amendment, so I don't know if you actually have to have a draft number on there, you're
That's
just
true.
Okay.
voting
Oh,
to
yeah.
advance.
Right.
Yeah.
And well, maybe we should have Senator.
Find the bill favorably.
The Senator Watson, do you want to report
Sure.
our report?
The report.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Well, I'm part of the next.
You don't get to go far.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so now we're moving to S-127. That will just pass out of finance. My understanding is that finance didn't have an amendment. Did finance have an amendment to S-127?
They did not vote an amendment. They intend to continue to work on it with the possibility of a floor amendment next week.
Okay. And
But they passed it out.
Yes, sir.
they passed that. So was Clarkson in here to report? Or did she left it up to you guys.
Whispered that she was going to vote.
What was the vote, Andy?
What was the vote? I think it was 5-1,
There
6-1,
was one, yeah, one more.
6-1, 6-1-0. Okay. Well, do you want
Allison will
to?
be back momentarily.
Okay, well, we could get started with that, or do you have a question, Senator Watson?
Nope. I do have a question, but it's for Senator Clarkson, and she's not here.
Okay,
I was contemplating asking for a break until she gets back, but if there's other things we can do.
I think she'll be back shortly. And then I think when she gets here, she can just pull up another chair if you want to walk us through the parts of the bill. I assume we have the version and the version as introduced would be, since it's a committee bill, is the version passed out of economic development?
Yes.
It would be under your name or whose name?
That is a good question. Do not know how it was posted.
Much faster to go on sales.
Then on the day,
I think the final draft is probably.
this 127.
It's under John Gray.
I just like to go there because then I know it's there.
John, does that mean you're coming up here and?
Yeah. Are you in charge?
I'm here.
I know.
I was about to explode. That would not have been pretty.
That's a position of power.
Well, where's Keisha? She's the reporter. Is Keisha here? John's on the floor and Keisha's not. Okay. Well, that's a break.
We do have a chair over there if you want to sit in the chair, but
John is comfortable anywhere.
yeah. If it was up to me, we would all be on the floor. I'm not a fan of chairs, actually. Just saying on the
Feel free to
record.
set an example there for yourself.
Well, it's weird if only one person's on the floor. But if we're all on the floor, then we're all more comfortable. Well, I know. That's why I'm
I'm
admiring
happy
his
where I
ability to launch it on the floor. This stems from my time in Japan where we sat on the floor all the time. I thought it was great. Okay, back to less interesting things. I mean, more interesting. That's 127.
Do that. So we just require.
So Senator Clarkson, do you want us to walk us
I'm gonna
through-
give you a big overview on this
Okay.
because our colleague Keisha is the reporter of this bill. And in all fairness, I had not prepared to come before you today as I had prepared to come before you yesterday. It was yesterday, wasn't it?
It was.
Okay. But I would say that this bill, our housing bill this year, is not unlike our economic development bill, which I presented yesterday, which is it builds on what works. There are almost no new programs in this. This invests further in what works wonderfully. This invests another $2 million in our downtown. Oh, no, that's economic development, sorry. This invests more, not that much more, in our Vermont Housing Improvement Program and our accessory dwelling units. It changes the parameters of that program a modest bit and simplifies the grants and loans. That it is $4 million for our VHIP program, which is, as you know, $50,000 grants for bringing our vacant, blighted, non-code compliant buildings up to code and back into use. This is low-hanging fruit, and also $50,000 to encourage people to take advantage of their large homes and create an accessory dwelling unit either over a garage or in their house. These programs have been incredibly successful and have brought numbers of units online, and I'm sure you've heard from Sean Gilpin in the department about those numbers, and I don't have those with me, but I could get them for you.
Yeah.
This also, further in the bill, creates, because the one program of those two, under the umbrella of VHIP, the one program which has been lagging behind a bit has been the accessory dwelling units, and we see those as really a great opportunity to give a little extra oomph to, and we have a 3-year pilot, and maybe the only time we use it, but a 3-year opportunity, and that's why Kirby's here, to incentivize owners to undertake creating an ADU. And what it would do is it would freeze the assessed value of a home at the point before, as soon as the construction's finished, but at the assessed value of the home before the ADU was added. It gives them a 3-year tax break and lets them sort of adjust to both earning the income that the ADU would provide and gives them an opportunity. It's just an added incentive to encourage people to develop an ADU.
Did you expand VHIP, or were ADUs allowed under old VHIP guidelines?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So they've always been.
They've always been part of the program. Initially, they were separate, but then we blended them under the same umbrella. And they get the same benefit. However, they do not require the same degree of, they don't require that you take in people exiting homelessness. They do require that they not be used as short-term rentals.
For a certain amount of
Same
time?
with all, yeah.
For a certain amount of time, or
No.
in perpetuity?
For forever. Right. If you're using public money, you need to help with a public good and public. Oh, I may be being corrected by lunch council.
Clarify that one, and I'm happy to dive into it further when we get to that section.
That's not ADUs.
It's section 1. It depends on my understanding is it depends on what funding you're getting from here. It depends on the length of time afterwards in which you have to maintain it for a specific purpose.
Right, but the ADUs are not able to be short-term rentals.
That is true.
Correct.
That is true, yes.
Come join us.
Yes, please do.
You're gonna trade places with me.
For the record, Senator Keisha Hinsdale, I was in finance as they circle around a definitional change that I think will matter to this committee too, should you care about the CHIP part of the bill. But anyhow, I forgot all my.
Yeah, we're just talking about sort of big picture. I'm saying that we're building on what works.
Yeah.
And investing further in programs we know that work. And I had just finished or at least, sort of finished with it, until you get to new use.
Okay,
So our next section,
are we going here?
well, and I was just doing big picture.
Oh, good,
So
okay.
actually, why don't you dive into
This
this?
is
'Cause you're
fun,
right.
this is fun. 2 chairs of the committee, 1 former, 1 current. I often, what am I looking at? Why are we
Yeah.
looking over there? Okay.
We're talking
I
about our
was
house.
wondering that too.
I have shared this with Senator Clarkson, but one of the best metrics I always had in mind was the cost per unit. So, you know, you're stripping all the money out, we're gonna figure out what box that we will all live in. But we are in a prolonged moment where the more units we're able to bring onto the market, the more we are able to solve this just larger housing crisis in terms of rent prices, homelessness, and everyone getting stuck further down the ladder because there are simply not enough units of housing. So things like VHIP and the Rental Revolving Loan Fund have hovered in the $35,000 to $50,000 range per unit of housing that's brought either back or newly into the market. So, you know, you might have different metrics because, for example, we have been fans of the Missing Middle Home Ownership Program in the past. That is more like $120,000 of subsidy per unit, but home ownership is a very different thing than getting someone into a unit of rental housing. So I don't have unit figures for everything, but I think we still try and make sure that we're getting as much impact as we can with our dollars on solving a statewide housing crisis.
And this is the biggest bang we get for our buck at the moment.
Which one?
VHIP. And the rental.
And rental revolving loan fund.
So we're here
Did
with MERS. No, I haven't gotten there yet.
And Mr. Chair, you want us to walk through each section that contains an appropriation?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm just
I mean,
looking
if there's
around.
any just, highlights, because we'll have.
Great.
The next one's
So
our
go through
manufactured housing improvement program.
Yes, so this actually, my editorializing here is that, myself and, Chair Jane Kitchell, were always, you know, found it, and I think the governor would agree, find it really important to make sure we don't forget about our mobile home communities, and manufactured housing in this conversation, because that is often the absolute most affordable home ownership option for Vermonters. And beyond that, if they are renting, they may own their actual mobile home and rent and pay lot rent, and that's way lower rent than they're going to be able to pay anywhere else. And we see this every time there's a disaster or something that upends a mobile home community. They, you know, if they paid off their mobile home, then they're not going to find somewhere else to rent for $400 to $600 a month. So this helps people stay in their mobile homes and get improvements that they need. When we first put this program together and it was taking a while and there was not enough flexibility, I remember a veteran who lived in a Colchester mobile home reached out to me and really, I have emphysema, I need the program, my roof is leaking and it's giving me, you know, conditions with mold. And we finally figured things out for him and then he passed away. So, you know, I feel really strongly about this program, and I think for the first time it's base budgeted in the proposal. And, you know, you can tell, it would mean a lot, I think, to a lot of people if this received base budget funding after so long of us overlooking mobile housing.
And this is $2 million appropriation. It's up to $20,000 per use, and the average use of the program is lower than that, but it is grants up to $20,000.
Does the fiscal note make that differentiation between base and one time?
Temporary from fiscal office, the fiscal note does not make the distinction. However, I have a spreadsheet that calls out what B section it is, which I think differentiates between base and what you don't.
And with Ted in the room, we would be negligent to not identify that he's done a terrific fiscal note on this bill, which I encourage you all to look at.
Looking at it right now.
Oh, good.
Do you want to do the infrastructure fund?
Okay, are we to the infrastructure fund?
Oh, I'm looking at.
Happy to. Yeah, no, we're at section 3, which is the infrastructure sustainability fund. I'm happy to have you do that.
Okay,
The revolving
sure.
loan fund. These are all in the governor's budget so far.
Right, infrastructure is our greatest barrier right now to, not just housing, but particularly, rural housing. You know, this is kind of the baseline that we need, to get any new units in, a lot of our communities. And so, there's just, usually, if you're in a rural place, you might not be in a municipality that can carry a bond. So getting bonding for specific projects, is valuable. And, this is in the governor's budget.
For 9.1 million, it would just help create this revolving loan fund, through the Vermont Municipal Bond Act. Michael Gahn may have
He was
already
in
come
here
and spoken
talking.
to you about it.
Okay.
So then that's great. So,
But this is only for municipalities.
this is, municipalities can directly apply for this. And it's all kinds of infrastructure, engineering, planning, design, construction for water and sewer, wastewater, and transportation improvements.
It has to have a specific tie to housing.
Yes. Thank you.
So Senator Westman just can't use it for the transportation budget?
No, as much as he'd like.
No, I just as soon spend it here, but
Okay, affordable housing tax credit?
Yes, so, this is still VHFA okay, I just called a couple different things in different places. So several years ago, we started a modest amount of funding for down payment assistance for first generation home buyers. That built on down payment assistance for first time home buyers. And that built on tax credits that we've had, I think I introduced it 14 years ago for a first time home buyer tax credit. First time home buyer tax credit and first time home owner assistance grants have been extremely successful, and I haven't updated the figures in a long time, but it's something like, the average age of 30, the average income of 61,000. So, these are the folks that we're trying to stabilize and get into their first homeownership opportunity and experience. You will hear me wax poetic in economic development about how many people are foregoing milestones in their 30s because they simply cannot afford them. And it's kind of dissolving, some of our conventions in society.
Okay, Senator Westman.
so
Yes.
how did finance deal with the tax credits?
I have like bits and pieces of knowing how they dealt with it. They are working on an amendment that does not relate to this section
It
any
relates
longer.
to CHIP, to the infrastructure.
Only the normal path
Oh, yeah.
here is that we take out the spending piece to give us the ability. But on the other side, if you're at the same time you're doing tax credits, you're taking revenue away from our picture.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, we don't usually deal with that.
Okay.
So, but
it is a tax expenditure, as you
But it
pointed
is a
out.
tax expenditure and it does adjust, and I'm not arguing, all of the stuff you're doing in here is stuff that I think affects middle income homeowners stuff and gets the stuff out the door a lot faster than other things that we do. So I just, how it fits in the budget is it all comes together at the end and the tax credit is giving revenue away.
I saw that Chad from VHFA came back, who I think VHFA knows more about how finance feels right now about keeping this language in.
The tax credit part?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, Chad Simmons, Vermont Housing Finance Agency. So the Finance Committee moved the bill favorably without removing the tax credit. I think that as been discussed, I think the question is, what is the impact on the FY26 budget? As of right now, and the impact on the FY26 budget is 250.
Yeah, well, we'll get that from from drug fiscal. So, but the committee didn't have any other issues about what the impact.
I think they were looking towards this committee.
Okay.
Is my, and I can't speak for the committee themselves, but I think they moved it favorably.
Okay. And it is, yeah, 250 going up to 2.5 million.
Right.
In the out years.
I was gonna say, I don't know that they took much testimony on it.
On the
I
tax,
think-
but they had the fiscal note.
But
More.
poor Collins waited till the very end of whatever day was very long.
Yes, yes.
I will say that, so she was there, and I think she got cut short on this piece, there were concerns were addressed outside of time in the chair, and here we are.
Right. Well, as long as they had the fiscal note to look at it, they knew what the.
Well, and I just like to, they're two quite different programs. The first time home buyers program is great, and it's been a success now for many years. And many people in this building and or who used to work in this building have used it, and it was very gratifying to have that happen. But first generation is really tackles trying to really break cyclical poverty. And because we know that if we have more people owning their own homes, we can begin to do that. Home ownership generally for most people in Vermont is their largest asset.
Mm-hmm.
And to get people into owning their own homes really is beginning to break some of that cycle. So we view this as a critically important piece of what we.
I absolutely agree. It's a good program and all of that.
Yeah.
I just don't know how.
We have no
when
idea
you fit
how it's gonna happen.
in the numbers and we have to balance at the end
But
where that fits versus.
we appreciate it. We appreciate it. We understand this will happen, and we understand it's all we're right in the right season to say it's gonna sugar out.
Yeah, that's what, all we need to do.
Okay.
Next is a study on developing the needed number of housing units that are accessible and available to people with a range of disabilities, both physical, cognitive, developmental. I think a lot of us have heard from parents around the state that when we create more of these units, it's a win-win-win because often there are resources available for that person, just not a housing option for them. So it's about the accessibility of the unit and its maybe proximity to others who receive services. So this is a study that also builds on other areas, including thank you for your inclusion in the BAA of $2.8 million for a project in Burlington. Obviously the BAA is in flux, but we appreciate that you also are paying attention to this really critical need and one where we can wrap our arms around the problem.
Senator
Yeah, so this has obviously been a significant concern in our committee for several sessions. And as I looked at, I did go through the language, and my questions are probably more related to the charge given to the committee and the committee membership. But I don't know how you want to do that. I did talk with Senator Clarkson a tiny bit. Yes, so, and also understanding that the current, the most recent river flow housing in Moncton for folks with disabilities was very much funded privately. And so there's nothing here, there's no membership with a private individual or folks who have been interested in doing this, who might like to be involved. And then the type of housing that we're talking about, because it could be, so the different types of housing, right. We're looking for independent living situations.
With supports.
And so that, and then the assessment of the service needs, as well as the assessment of numbers and geographic location. And some of that, I'm just thinking that needs to be embedded in here. The folks that you have on the committee are terrific because they understand the disability needs, but they may not understand some of the issues that are involved in developing housing like this. So that, just a comment there. This is not an appropriations issue, except it may affect a number of people on the study committee. And I'll just.
And this, as with all, this
yeah.
is evolving. The House will probably add some things as well. And I would just let the committee know that they're estimating that there are over 600 new units needed,
Right.
particularly as these
Yeah, I
parents
understand.
of these developmentally disabled, they're not young people anymore either. These are now, increasingly aging people and their parents are aging, and so the need is becoming increasingly greater.
So, and just to get everyone on the same page, there's 11, proposed members of the committee. It includes,
Do you need to have 2 legislators on
no.
Nope, we took,
I
we're
would-
trying to be.
I would
Listen, I'm the first to
definitely-
say we don't even.
Given the membership, I definitely have, I would definitely,
You want a house member and something.
I love it that the appropriations committee wants
but I
to add
would-
money to the bill.
I would point out that
So
the
we'll
state
take out the
treasurer
legislators and
or
then-
designee is on there, and the state
Somebody else.
treasurer's office has been putting a lot of private,
Yes.
public-private housing funding stacks together. And the one member appointed by DDHI, the Developmental Disabilities Housing Initiative, is at least representative of the private group of parents and families that have come to the table. If you don't think, VHCB, obviously, usually they're doing more on the nonprofit side, but if you feel like you need more private,
I would
representation.
encourage that. I mean, because one of the first things that I did about 4 sessions ago was to ask VHCB to designate funding for specific types of housing, including this.
Mhm.
So VHCB has been on track with it. The issue is having some of the private funders who know where the housing for perhaps retrofit or improvement or the land is available.
Right.
So, I mean, just think about it.
Yeah.
This is something that I think needs
Mhm.
some.
And I don't know if this is where Senator Clarkson was going, but, the more people that don't come with their own source of funding, the more money we'd have to find for them. So I'm sure this group will hear from those folks, but, then we kind of be responsible for more for them.
Okay,
So
so
next
if
we
you
move-
want to have all the committee vote on it, we need to.
Yeah, we
Okay,
can't spend time on that.
So
Let's
next is
break.
brownfields,
No.
I think.
you nothing without money, we're not
Right,
buying money.
I think we're doing
Okay,
money,
good.
right?
This section
Let's-
Okay,
15.
good.
So just
Great.
keep us going. We jumped to section 15.
Thank you.
And there are a couple sections on brownfields. We were really happy A&R worked with us on trying to continue to reduce barriers to housing in our appropriate places. And so we have, for example, A&R agreed to put housing as a priority in their brownfield cleanup. But most importantly, we need to keep cleaning up our brownfields. And as we know, there's a $48 million backlog in cleanup. I had asked for 6 with my committee. Our committee came back with, well, we're willing to go to 4. So we have $4 million for additional brownfield cleanup, which is, as all of you around this table know, is a drop in the bucket in terms of the need. So that's the brownfield piece. If $2 million would go to directly to the Brownfield Revitalization Fund, and $2 million would go with the RPCs to continue the assessments.
Okay.
So the next couple of sections are CHIP, the evolution of the TIF program or the project-based TIF program or whatever folks want to call it. This would use tax increment financing, but be a little more creative in how the funding can be put together so that more private developers can partner with municipalities to take advantage of this option. It was designed with everything from an old racetrack in Fairhaven to, a project in Burlington in mind. And I think there are differing opinions, but many would agree that because TIF has been so bound to designated downtowns and larger village centers, the goal of this is to try and make it much more flexible and available to rural communities for specific projects.
Okay.
And scalable.
It's scalable. We are having an ongoing conversation with finance right now about a similar conundrum we ran into. We are still working on language that does not make this available for luxury housing projects, but does make it available for both what are considered traditionally perpetually affordable housing projects and moderate income housing projects. So we have existing session law definitions around things like the missing middle program, et cetera. But we are still trying to make sure we get right the percentage and the definitional parameters around what a good program is that builds the housing we all need and all need to be able to afford, which is quite a range between, you know, very low income to no income to about 150% of AMI. There is an AMI chart available should you like one.
That's federal poverty.
Oh, that's
federal
need an
poverty.
You can have AMI, that's where we live. For example, AMI in the Chittenden County region, which includes Franklin and Grand Isle, is $95,000. So 150% of AMI obviously is 1.5 times that. And, you know, the AMI percentage you need to afford a home really keeps rising because of interest rates and inflation and housing prices.
Center line.
So my question is, this provides incentive for development in rural areas, as you said, and it's modifying the TIF definition to do that. So my question is
in another section, right? Like the TIF remains TIF.
I understand.
Okay, I just,
yeah, no,
it's so touchy. I don't want it.
Let me finish here. Let me finish. So the question is, how did this come about? Is this an incentive that is absolutely necessary given the significant resources that we are investing in housing? So without this TIF proposal, would the housing be built anyway? Because we have a significant investment for the last couple of sessions, huge in housing. And
$600 million.
But this will, I understand TIF. I'm a strong proponent of TIF as we've had it in our downtowns and downtown areas. And this is going to expand the use of the TIF into places where some municipalities or citizens might be very concerned about that intermediate or early loss of revenue. So just, is this an incentive that is purposeful and necessary? Has it been asked for?
Senator Lyons, you asked a great question because the key word in here is infrastructure. So we have put a lot of money into building new housing, but the big stumbling block there is there that $2 million, $4 million for the infrastructure to be built and generally owned, hopefully by the community, you know, not the developer, but that's always a push and pull. And so there have been very small amounts of money that would be needed for underground infrastructure that have stymied housing development in our more rural communities. And so that is what this is getting at.
And
It's not just for infrastructure, it's for the housing.
No, this is for the infrastructure.
This is just for the infrastructure.
And so this could be, Janine, this could be large scale septic. This could be a deeper well. This could be something that just in downtown Reading, a town of 700 people, could help enable building 10 to 15 units. What we're trying to do is create a project-based infrastructure opportunity for our more rural communities.
Why did you think that the TIF percentages need to be changed? Like this is more rich, if you want to call it that, or a higher deduction from the education fund than a normal TIF is the way I'm reading it.
So very small amounts of money in comparison, and for smaller municipalities that, you know, are much lower capacity to carry that kind of debt load. So it's, you know, yes, I would.
And you meet that rule and it's smaller by the tier requirement? Is that how you're targeting those communities that you just said? They're the more needy communities?
I think it's. Can you show me which percentage figure you feel is more generous?
I'm looking actually at the fiscal note where it says that they would be able to retain 100% of the municipal increment, 80% of the education property tax. And under current law, it says it's 70% of education and 85% of the municipal.
And I think, we have our council here.
May I offer something? So John Gray, Office of Legislative Counsel. One thing to think about here that is distinct for this approach as against TIF districts. When we talk about TIF districts, we're talking about a broad geographic area in which a bunch of projects can be pursued over time. And so that you might expect that the increment that's going to apply to financing would basically grow over the life of the TIF district, right? And so the reason I bring this up is that if you have applied all of your increment to your financing then you've covered the cost of financing, and any increment that is retained beyond that flows through its normal routes. Like it will continue to the ed fund, it would go to municipal budgets and the like. For a TIF district, districts have an incentive to continually take on financing because they're trying to pursue as many projects as they can throughout the district. And this approach is specific to a particular project. So while you are retaining a larger increment, theoretically, you might have less financing that's being taken on, and therefore money might flow through its normal path. This is just, I just want to call it that as distinctive. I don't know what will happen empirically, but something to think about.
Right, because it would be the increment of the total property or the increment of the infrastructure.
So there can be geographic separation between where the infrastructure is installed and where the housing development site is. The increment is generated where the housing development site is. So you might not expect much property growth where the infrastructure is installed. I don't know, but the vision is that the housing development site where the housing development is installed or constructed is going to have a growth in property value. And you're generating the increment from there and the immediately adjoining parcels.
But that wouldn't get the treatment of the TIF district.
So the
It would just be the road
for that goes to cover the financing for the infrastructure. It doesn't finance the housing development. That is treated in the normal ways of the development pursuits of project. This is just to cover the cost of financing for the infrastructure, stimulate.
But when they're trying to determine what the increment is it the increment on the housing that the infrastructure caused, or just on the infrastructure?
Yeah.
It's on the housing development site, which is where the housing development occurs and the surrounding parcels. So if the infrastructure is on the housing development site, and I noted that it could be separate from, you would have the increment from the full piece there. But the increment isn't related to the infrastructure itself, it's related specifically to the housing development. So wherever the housing development is sited and immediately adjoining parcels, that's what you're getting.
So it is lower dollar amounts that are, as Bill said, because you're not talking about all the development, but
exactly.
The increment is still the same, because you're talking about the development.
And you're not talking about taking on additional debt all the time to keep financing.
You're pursuing a particular project.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
Go ahead, Senator.
So it has to be new development.
Yes, actually, this came up, because.
I only asked
Yeah.
that in relationship, I have at least 3 villages where their infrastructure, those villages can't develop. I have 1 village with a moratorium on their water project.
It's like Woodstock, we're in the same boat.
And we have a moratorium. They have septic capacity, but not water, so we can't do anything. So someone would have to propose a new development for us to be able to access the money, and set something up to, deal with our water issue.
So I'll say this, I think to maintain the integrity of this program for now, we should probably leave it as new development. There's been a larger discussion about the property tax freeze we instituted last year, especially for flood impacted communities, where you might take a blighted site that has relatively low grand value list and redevelop it. And for a certain amount of years, you are not paying the property tax on the redeveloped grand list value. So I think I just, without having enough time when someone raised to me that it can't be used for renovation.
This is not renovation.
This is just the ability to use infrastructure you have that is not able to add any more capacity.
And it has shut down all the development in the village. And I'm just trying to figure out a way that I can, if right now.
We have the infrastructure funding piece somewhere else.
The revolving loan fund that's being set up by the municipal bond bank may be your answer.
But yes.
Yeah.
But I said, okay, so, I mean, I think this could be massaged to work for, existing buildings where they're not getting the full value out of the number of units.
The problem for us is it's an existing water system, but we can't have any development because A&Rs come in with a moratorium.
Okay.
And so to have any new development in the village, we need to be able to increase water capacity and fix some main lines that were put in the village.
I think the infrastructure program may be your.
Yeah, I get.
Can we ask, let's go, it seems like it's.
What's the specific question?
It seems like if a town has a restriction on their water system, they wanted to build more new development, could they use the TIF districts to expand their well so that they have more water to build that, right?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
It doesn't have to be a whole new development, it can just be one parcel.
The infrastructure is, you should think of the infrastructure and the housing development separately.
Yeah.
You could do lots of things with the
Right.
infrastructure, and it can have benefits beyond just the housing development.
I'm just wondering how it fits because we have moratorium. I have 2 villages with moratoriums on their development.
Ellen is here, yeah, and I don't wanna, but, well, we've been working on a definition elsewhere.
Sorry.
No, that's a good question.
We've been working on a definition elsewhere of imminent capacity. This was in relationship to what am I trying to say? The exemptions, from Act 250 for housing projects. But I feel like natural resources and economic development have been spending a lot of time trying to think about how you ensure you're approved for infrastructure that would add capacity. And we could probably still take another look at that. I didn't know you had a moratorium.
And I think it's something we could clarify with Michael Don. So we're cognizant of your time.
Yeah, medical deductions.
Yeah,
Yes,
this is you.
yes. They wrote Wake Robin into the fiscal note.
Yeah.
So,
Ted just left, it's time to be.
That's a good thing.
well, yes.
This is the Wake Robin fix.
It's okay to say what it is, because
Well,
it's a model for the rest of the
it
state.
is, thank you. So Senator Lyons can continue this conversation with you all, but the reason it spells out Wake Robin is because it's the only full continuum of care living facility, senior living facility in the state. And I really hope we have more of these in the future and they're being written up in New York Times and everywhere that how nice it is for someone, a couple particularly, to age on the same campus, even if somebody needs more care at some point. It prolongs both of their happiness and well-being and lives to be able to stay in the same place, and it's cheaper. So, this is recognition that, people pay for both their housing and their long-term care at the same time here, and that ends up getting taxed differently than it would elsewhere.
So Senator Norris has got to go to a family event. I would assume that we're going to pass this favorably. So I'm going to say that we're going to take the money out.
We actually covered pretty much everything.
Yeah, Senator Norris could leave if we're going to pass this favorably and take all the money out. We could count your yes vote before we actually have to vote.
That's fine. Take the money out and I can support this. And when it gets to the floor, obviously it's just a lot of information to obtain here in a short period of time, so. But yes, take the money out. I can vote to move to the floor.
Okay, so when we get to that, we'll count to the yes vote.
Check.
Is the,
Just do what Pat does, you know?
Not always. Don't do what Pat does always.
Not always.
on the fiscal note,
Have a good weekend, everybody.
thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
The money that's the summary of the appropriations in the fiscal note, I think is the same as in the section 21 appropriations, or is there,
500,000?
well,
No,
there's,
Oh, the whole thing? Are we done? Oh,
yeah, it's 50,000,000.45.
yeah, that's what they had. No, it's gotta be more than that. 49.7 million.
I said 50.45, I believe.
Well, that's what I wondered, if that table in the summary of fiscal year, table 1 and the fiscal note,
There's two tables.
the second table is, so table 1
Uh-huh.
on page 1, 49,700,000.
Right, and Ted has left, so he's the author of this.
So I didn't know if this section 21 appropriations, that's 45.6 million.
So
I just wonder what the difference is.
Thanks, Kirby.
You an amendment to
Okay.
remove
Oh, right.
the section 15, which is the appropriation of the $4 million for brownfields,
Okay.
and section 21, which is the remaining appropriation.
So that's how you get to the 49 million.
Because
those
they're
two-
accounted for elsewhere.
All the 45.6 is in section 21.
Didn't you
It's
just,
in the appropriation section, so if you remove the appropriation section, it comes out.
the treasurer's, I mean, the credit score money,
Okay.
but the
The first.
So the 4 million for the brownfields is not, it's in section 15.
Right.
Section 21 has all the other 45.6. You add those two together, you get the 49.7 that's in the table at the beginning.
Plus the treasurer's is the 100,000.
What treasurers? Where's the treasurers?
The treasurer's is $100,000. We didn't talk about it because we're still working on
Is it in the bill?
it. It's not in the bill at the moment, but the money inadvertently stayed.
But you've added it in to the 49.7.
So you can take it out and.
And then there's also the issue of the per diems. Is that in
In
your
the
amendment?
draft amendment that I have, I did not touch the per diems for the two legislative members on the committee, which the language in that committee does allow them per diems for those meetings. And there's also the tax credits.
The tax credits are tax expenditure. We can't really deal with that in here, but we would.
I understand.
We figured it out.
Do I read this, that there's $750,000 in tax expenditures? Is that correct?
It's on the second page.
I think.
You have 500 and then another 250 and.
In FY 26, it's just
Right.
250.
Yeah. So for an fiscal office, it is $750,000. You have $250,000 for the VHFA, tax credit, VHFA tax credits in the afternoon, and then $500,000 for, changing the tax treatment of medical expenses and continuing care.
Oh, right. That's 500,000.
Yes, and that's $500,000.
So,
Yeah, okay.
I'm not gonna vote no on this, but I think that is a way out of around our process of trying to make sure that everything, we look at all of it in one package when we do the budget.
The tax expenditures and,
Right, I think the tax expenditures become a backdoor to go out around us.
I just want to say that would not be our intention, and I specifically remember last year when the continuum of care tax made it all the way here, and Jane came to me and said, do you have another $500,000? And I didn't, so it died. So, I mean, I feel like that's a process question up to you all, but please know we weren't trying to go around you with how.
And I'm not gonna hold this up.
well, we could also pull the tax credits out.
Yeah,
Well,
I would anticipate, I mean, can you do that without pulling the link? But I don't want to say yes right away, but.
may I just say the Committee of Jurisdiction has passed this out favorably. So the tax credits have been passed out favorably.
I mean, I think Senator Westman, I don't remember the tax credits getting stripped out last time, but I just remember Senator Kitchell saying not accounted for, so
Right.
it's dead. So I just don't know if you have to take it out to do that, or you can budgetarily pin that. But I think we would understand that if the money does not materialize for those, they would die because they don't have the money to pay for them.
But they wouldn't. I think that's Weston's point. It's like if it's just a tax credit and we pass the bill of the budget, and then there's this less money, we'd have to account for it.
Yeah, no, they would die in conference.
Or we don't, maybe, yes, I think that,
I'm not,
that's the concern.
I'm not gonna kill it, but I do think going forward, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, the House Appropriations Committee removed them from their version of the bill.
They did. They moved the tax credits.
That is their recommendation.
Right. Well, I think we should do that, especially when they're larger credits and we're looking at larger amounts as we go outer years. That's money we wouldn't have for other things, so it is appropriating money that we don't have to appropriate for other things. And if we're making an argument that federal funding problems, as you said, Senator Westman, if we get to the point where we don't have Medicaid and we're having to exit seniors from facilities, that's gonna be higher budget value. Higher budget priority.
Sure, but I mean, I think that's how your process works, is by stripping everything out, you then consider it, once we're clearer on what the federal picture.
Right.
We're gonna be much clearer in another 2 months when you're gonna be doing this
Yeah.
final work. So I think we're comfortable, I mean, that's your process, so we knew that coming in, eyes wide open.
Okay, good.
So, I just think that, I mean, I'd honor their work.
It's
Right,
it's
but
it's
they
all
weren't,
good
but they don't
stuff.
have to appropriate the money, so.
Right,
Right.
but are you leaving CHIP in, because it doesn't really have like a,
We don't have a dollar amount.
yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
yes, or no?
Well, they're just stripping the money, they're not
Okay.
stripping the program.
Okay,
I would entertain a motion that strips the section 15, and we have language, I don't know if you saw, that says this section, you do have it, about the, like, this section can't be implemented unless the money is appropriated, instead of just, I mean, we could just strike the whole section, but we could also put language that says this section takes
That
effect if
section is
the
a
money.
direct appropriation, so I think if you're trying to take all the appropriations out, then you need to strike the section. I don't think
You mean
adding
like
anything
Robin
that,
15.
There's nothing they can do without the money.
again, that section,
That's the way
section
Brown-
15, I can pull it up if it's helpful.
That's the
It's-
Wake Robin.
no, that's
Nope,
what
this
you
is Brown.
That's 18. They're looking at
All it
15.
is an
It is a straight appropriation.
In the same with, rating.
You don't want the contingency funding for that, because the program already exists and already operates, it has funding in it.
Okay.
There's funding that they can get from the environmental contingency fund, it's not like you're creating a new program
Okay.
and capitalizing it right away.
So we'll use the contingency funding language when there's a new program.
Yep.
And is that the same for all the 46 million in the section 21? Like, do we need that contingency language for anything there?
I'm not familiar enough with that.
It's right here.
It seems like it's mostly VHFA's program, so it's existing program.
Yeah, the question is, are these existing programs? that
Every-
we have?
Neighbor Works
The only
program.
thing that's not an existing program is the municipal bond bank's infrastructure revolving loan fund.
And the treasurer.
And the treasurer's.
That's not actually.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
the pilot we're continuing to work on.
Can you, so I would entertain a motion that strikes section 15, strikes section 21, and strikes the tax expenditures. I guess that would be in, I don't know what section those are. It's like table
Are
2.
you looking for striking both the
Section 18.
the
Tax credits all in.
section
So it's the
related
Wake Robin
to
plus the other, the home buyer.
Yeah.
So the down payment assistance, section 6 and section 18.
So you're striking all the tax expenditures and all the, may I just ask you, Andy, if your first thought on section 15, I think selfishly, because the brownfield's so important, can we keep the language but not the money?
Well,
Instead of
that's-
striking the whole section?
That's what Councilor
So,
Grady
Mike,
seemed to be
could
saying
you
that was not
suggest
advisable.
We do something else? Sorry, I didn't appreciate that. Right.
I defer to my senior colleague here, but it's, the section is just an appropriation, so.
It's about awarding that money and the split of that money.
It's true, and it's all the money, right, okay.
It's all.
Okay.
Oh, my
So it's
God.
not, it wouldn't be changing,
All money.
They
it
don't
wouldn't
have
be changing any of the other.
Wake
But
Robin
as you
section
said,
listed
Allison,
in the
it's
table.
a very,
too,
Yeah, but
summary
it's-
of
but
tax
it's-
credits.
so when we get to the
Underneath.
end, more priority.
Section 18.
Yeah.
Under that table. it says-
Yeah, I got it.
There.
They're there, no,
So Section
I'm right here.
15, section 6, section 18, and section 21.
What about section 19 and 20?
Oh, yeah, section 19, 20, and 21.
That 19.
Don't help them, don't help them.
I told you those, that I work for them just as much as I work for you.
Yes, all the tax
Okay.
expenditures and appropriations.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that includes the per diem.
Okay.
Are you able to draft that up?
We are,
I can probably have it in a few minutes.
Okay.
relief gutted, but grateful.
But we haven't voted it out yet.
No, but I mean, I've got a sense of it.
And it's still here, it's not like.
I'll move the bill favorably with the tax expenditures and appropriations out.
Okay. With that, or any other discussions, questions of what you're voting on? You're voting on all the bill without the appropriations or tax expenditures.
Feels awful, doesn't it?
Gutted, but
No.
grateful.
I trust this
I'm
committee.
grateful.
We will be back.
So the clerk shall call the roll.
All right, Senator Norris, yes.
He said yes. He said
That was a
yes.
great impression.
He was a check.
Senator Watson,
Yes.
Senator Baruch,
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Senator Brennan, yes. Senator Perchlik,
Yes.
very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking your late Friday afternoon for this.
Likewise. And who is gonna report this?
Oh, who has housing?
We have some
Westman.
assigned to housing.
We don't have
Richie
a
does them.
thematic category.
Science is such an important topic.
I can do it.
It's either.
If you want.
I'm also willing.
Or it could be Ann, because it's got a lot
Or
of
it could be
stuff.
North because he's not here.
That's a good idea.
But we have a tendency here of giving to the person that's not here.
I'm in favor.
I-
Let's give it to Bob.
We can do that.
I'm willing to do it.
I moved.
I'm not writing that down
I think
yet.
we should give it to Senator Watson.
I'll do it.
Senator Watson does have housing.
Yes.
Do I
That's
have it? No, I did,
Yeah.
and then I took it.
Oh, that's right.
Took it out.
You took it
But
away.
I
You
did it
moved
she is the other great jurisdiction in
Yeah.
terms of housing.
And municipal infrastructure.
Sure, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
Senator Watson.
And you know it from your old job.
From my old job.
Yeah, as mayor.
I was mayor, indeed, I do.
Yeah, I thought that's what we were talking about.
Senator Watson, will be the report.
She eagerly waits.
And so you need to sign the amendment when they come back with it, so don't leave.
Okay.
You can go to your room if you want.
Oh, you can find me.
Don't leave the vote.
Can I go to my room?
You can go to your room.
So we're amending.